He walked into their house to the next door and said, "Hey, you got any of those peach stout cookies?" And she just started screaming, "Go me!"
Yeah. I am so impressed with you.
Thank you for rearranging your
So many
schedules.
things. You can guide us in the right way. I do appreciate that.
I appreciate that compliment.
You just always have something that is very informative and helpful.
5:30, so we thought this extra half hour
Appreciate that.
would help us with enough discussion and thought as we go through this. We have decided that we'd like to talk about, first of all, this paper that's on your placemat, wherever you want to call that, and talk about some work that's gone on here in the last couple of weeks. And Heidi Jo, I had a variety of things going on today, so Heidi Jo and Keith put a lot of time into kind of putting the finishing touches. Now, as always, we understand that we're staff, we're the district, leadership team, whatever you want to call us. But the board is the ones who make decisions about things like this. And this 5, 10, 15-year plan is still something that we're bringing up, but we need to have that advisory committee, facilities advisory committee, work on that. This is more specific to just what we think we need for buildings, new buildings, and the long-term facility, the facilities advisory committee, both the staff one with the board, and then also the community one that we're trying to build, will help us, refine this and really tighten it up. But as of right now, we just feel like we're in a little bit of a time crunch to try to get this, lined up and have some feeling that we're not just shooting from the hip and talking about next year or the year after. And to see how we feel like, the leadership team feels like we should proceed forward. And that's what this 5, 10, 15 year plan is about. Once again, I want to thank Keith and Heidi Jo for putting in so much time, because I was in and out all day, the phones and just a variety of things. So they were very patient with me, I think, unless they talked badly about me when I left. I don't know. Did you?
We forgot to do that. We didn't have enough time.
Okay. So with that, they put it together, and it's at the end, when we spent quite a bit of time, started changing slides, and there's a rationale why we ended up where we ended up. And so with that, are we good if we go forward?
Yes, do you mind if I just make a quick suggestion?
Absolutely.
As board members, I think it would be a good idea, if you haven't already, to write down a list of what you feel are our district's greatest needs when we're talking about facilities, and maybe even beyond facilities. But I think it would be a good thing as we listen to this plan from Heidi Jo and Keith that we pay attention to how those needs will be met through this plan, and how many of those needs on a list that you would make or maybe jot down right now are met through this plan, and see if it works in your mind to achieve our greatest needs and our greatest goals. So.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate that. One of the things Keith and I have talked a lot about is the limited amount of time and trying to get organized, but we are presenting an idea, but we want your feedback, and this isn't firm or solid. We are happy to make adjustments based on what the board recommends. This is just a general summation of the direction we were starting to feel we were headed, right?
Exactly. And we're smart enough to know that the board gets to make the final decision on these kind of things. But we need to make some solid recommendations based on what we know in the trenches every day. And those two are deeper in the trenches than I am. So it's good to work with these two and see how well they work together, while yet I like the fact they work together, but they don't mamsy-pamsy about their own opinions. It's pretty awesome to watch, because they're honest, and they...
Mamsy-pamsy?
We're not mamsy-pamsy.
Yeah, not at all. So,
We don't always agree,
Yeah,
but we are able to have...
but you can agree to disagree.
Oh, yeah.
We make each
And
other
usually,
look at it a different way.
it's been good.
Okay. With
So-
that, go ahead.
So let's just go to that. Obviously, this was, a plan over the last 3 years that we had as a board, had talked about in a variety of things. I don't want to go too much into what we've already know about, but this was the plan. And so all along the way, especially last fall, as we met with parent groups, community outreach, as we had our town halls, as we had our individual conversations, there was always people are like, so what if it doesn't pass? What if it doesn't pass? What's your plan B? What do you have? And at the time, we had thoughts, obviously, but why are you worried about a plan B when you're really trying to get plan A to pass, right? Plan A had a lot of strengths. Plan A had some weaknesses, but we needed to know where we were, what resonated, what didn't resonate. And clearly, the reason why 220 is bolded and is large on this piece of paper is that at the end of the day was the issue. Either that price or the economic environment that we were in, that at the end of the day, that was the prevalent reason for that.
Too much to do all at once.
Too much to do. Lots of variables that everybody, depending on who you were, had different pros and cons of this plan.
Yeah, and based on feedback from surveys, from those focus groups, from input from people who visited those meetings, we were able to take the plan out, examine it, and look at it in a different way to meet our highest needs in a more efficient way. One of the things that we felt like was a bigger concern for us was that plan made our middle schools and elementary schools bigger than we'd like them to be in our small communities, and that's something we learned from the bond not passing. So this just kind of goes into what Keith had said about how people voted on the bond and why they voted against it. In this top portion, the red and the yellow really is just like, yeah, we voted no because it's too much. Whether 220 as a price tag was too much, or whether just like our economic situation is just really hard right now, and that makes it too much. And when we asked people, what do we need to consider with a future bond proposal or with future building plans, they said the impact on taxpayers.
So here's what happens. If you pass a bond, you can get everything you want now. And if you don't pass a bond, then you can't. So then the question is that means you have to phase it. Or you phase and bond later, or you do some different things. This tentative plan, again, you're going to look at 15 years. You're like, 15 years? Well, that's what happens when you don't pass a bond that was going to be basically for 20 years, right? Because we were going to pay it was for 20 years. So when you say we wanted it then, well, we didn't get it. And I get it. Our wonderful community members, our taxpayers and our voters, they said no. Well, then our phase now has to be a long-term approach. And it has to come from either we have to go back out with a different amount, or we look at other options. As you can see in the upper right, how do you do this without going to bond? Truth in taxation, capital reserve, selling property that we have that we know we won't use because of where growth, potential is.
And Keith makes a really good point about we still have the same needs we had when we talked about the bond. We have the same overall needs for the whole district, but we have to look at a solution in a different way that's more cost effective, that rolls it out in different phases, and leveraging those to make sure we hit the priorities in the order that best facilitates us meeting all of those needs.
When you have 88% that say we got to be careful of the tax raise, then that really is we got to somehow slow this down, spread it out. We know that 2029 is a big deal because 2029 is when the 2007 bond comes off the books. It's a half payment. So that's kind of why we have kind of a phase one, wait till the bond comes off. That's another time perhaps where we could jump in, and then phase three. Now, what's kind of scary is everybody around this table, who knows if we're going to be in our positions in 15 years? I won't be. But the reality is our job as a district leadership and as a school board is to look beyond tomorrow and look forward, because people did that for us, and we have to make sure that we're looking forward for the rising generations. Neil, you had a question or a thought.
So because we don't have a bond to draw down on a lump sum of money, we essentially have to take out a mortgage against future tax revenues. By doing that, the mortgage terms or the lease revenue bond terms usually are on a 20-year horizon. So if you look at that last phase three, 2035 to 2040, that means we're paying on those schools through 2060. That's the impact of not passing a bond. It's not anybody in this room's fault. It's the reality. When we don't have the money up front with better rates, it's going to extend that much longer out. Weber County, they passed a series of bonds. They built essentially 6 schools in the past 5 years, including a very new large high school. They bonded for over $300 million. But they started that process back in 2020. And so they were able to get the money up front, accrue interest on that money in their bank account, and be able to stretch the money or these projects out over 5 years. And by the time they pay the these schools, they're already in a fifth of their bond term. It's already done by the time they occupy these schools. Whereas this plan right here is going to require us to pay out through 2060. We're in 2025. That's several generations of time to pay on these. But that's the reality we're in right now.
Just
And
to
they earn money on the interest.
Yeah, and something to tack on to that too, something we'd said previously too, is the cost does go up. So as you'll notice, we have attached cost estimates to that, but really we don't know what the cost of phase 2 or phase 3 will actually be when we get around to doing it. So we should bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, those are just today. Well, we do know from the architects and the CMGCs that it's about a 6 to 7% increase in cost for a building annually is kind of the trend. Now we've seen it go whoop, 12, 14. We've seen it settle, but right now they're saying it's about 6 or 7. So these numbers, if you put times 6%, they're not going to be there. But that's what happens when you don't have a bond. Now I want to state something, and for those in the audience, those listening, whoever, I know one of the beefs right now is you're not addressing our greatest need. I've heard that, but if all you're looking at is my greatest need right this very second, you've missed the point of this phased effort. When you look at all of our needs, and will you just go back one?
When we look at all of our needs, phase 1 addresses as many of the needs at one time as we feel like we can do for the limitation of what we would impose upon taxpayers. As if you look at those numbers, that would be approximately 90 million, which is 40% of what the previous bond proposal was. So it raises the tax rate a proportion of that rather than as much. So
right. So if you go back one more, when you look at the needs of finding a way to decrease transition, save transportation, school start times, all of that, that need can be addressed. It is true we have safety concerns, unreinforced masonry at Bear River Middle, Bear River, Box Elder Middle, North Park, and Lakeview. But guess what? We also have unreinforced masonry at both high schools. We also have unreinforced masonry at Century. So it's not like those are the only 4. Those are just our oldest 4. I mean, Box Elder High's gym and auditorium, Bear River High's gym and auditorium, I'm not sure about the auditorium, Corey. They have unreinforced masonry, which means they were built prior to 1972. So I don't want us to get zeroed in that the only unreinforced masonry needs we have. So we still have buildings in our district but we're trying to get rid of that. So let's fast forward now to this. We still believe that moving 9th grade to high school for academic purposes. You can say whatever you want about extracurricular, but academic reasons to put 9 through 12, all classes are for high school graduation, all opportunities to advance, participate, graduate early, go to Bridgerland early. All of that can happen when 9th through 12th grade are together.
Something we need to add on to that too is if we did not move the 9th grade to the high schools still have construction update needs. Some core classes that need to be updated, as well as our CTE that needs to be updated in order to keep our students current.
Correct. So obviously moving 9th grade. Now, what is different about this plan compared to last? If all I said was 9th grade, you'd go, that's what you just did, and we said no. The difference is we now have this idea that has come to us that we believe is awesome to think about. It's a little outside the box, but now we create 4 middle schools of not 1,800, but of 800, like 650 to 800. And so now ACYI becomes a 6th through 8th grade school. Box Elder Middle School becomes a 6th through 8th grade school. Harris becomes a 6th through 8th grade school. And Bear River Middle becomes a 6th through 8th grade school. There are a lot of reasons why that's good. For collaboration, for parent choice, for behaviors that become impossible to keep kids away. You can have another parent school. Flexible placement.
Also feel like then you have a couple of elementary schools that will be feeder schools into those middle schools, and then a couple middle schools that are feeder schools into the high school. Something else that's nice about that is where you're going to add a 6th grade with the 7th and 8th grade, that 6th grade's not now part of a population of 1,800, but instead they're part of a much smaller population, so we get to know half of the kids, and then when we move to the high school, we get to know all of the students.
Question on that I've had someone ask is, what about the singleton teachers, or some of those ones that we have one teacher at the middle school that teaches that? How is that going to work if we split it into?
So, I mean, ideally, we hope that our enrollment's such that through either retirement, resignations, or what, but we do have people that teach in different schools.
Yeah.
Currently, our orchestra shares three schools. We have theater that sometimes does 2 schools. So.
And we have music teachers that will go from Century over to Discovery, and so we can, if as needed, we could split a teacher going from North Middle School, on the north end, let's just call it Harris Middle School, to Bear River Middle School. Those are very close together to get there in between.
Not our ideal.
If necessary.
But I think we can get as much as we can, because what they'll be offering is the same thing.
Yeah.
We're not going to have this group's going to have their own, it'll be pretty lined up.
That's what I'm getting, and I think that's what we need to make sure that we're having everything offered at both schools and have the faculty and staff to cover that. Same thing when we get to the 9th grade in the high school. I actually think that's a really good fit, because there's some CTE programs and some of those things that now when they're there, there's just more flexibility within those teachers.
Yeah, Mr. Wiley reminds me often, our CTE director, 8th grade CTE classes are not funded, only 9th through 12th. So putting them together actually allows those types. It's not that we can't have other, engineering or art type stuff, but the funds are 9 through 12 for CTE.
It allows a lot more flexibility for those 9th graders and the courses that they can take, and acceleration for parents who are interested in that as well.
So if we were to go to work and we decided that 9th grade was going to go, we've heard discussions that as early as August of 27, we could have the middle schools, the additions onto the high schools, and grades 6 through 8 switched over. I know that seems like not very long, a year and a half.
Definitely for Box Elder.
Definitely for Box Elder. Bear River's a little more complicated campus, but the reality is we could have a 6 through 8, 9 through 12 transition by August of 27. Now, we know if we stop there, we have not addressed the obvious, which is the north end is growing. There are 15 portables, soon to be 17, at McKinley and North Park. Just a little number that you might want to think about. We have elementary schools that have 22 classrooms. Currently, we have 17 portables. and they're growing. So the north needs not only North Park replaced, but it needs another elementary school. And so part of this phase one, we need to build an elementary school up north so that we have not just McKinley, North Park, Garland, and Fielding, but we add a fifth one.
And
Is
so,
that north and west Tremont, is that what that means?
yes, so a problem with our previous plan is in order to address the growth on the north end, we were going to use the intermediate school as an elementary school and take some of the impact off of McKinley and North Park. And again, as we mentioned with the middle schools, we started getting like, why it didn't occur in the 2.5 years, but it occurred in the months we were rolling out the bond, I don't know. But we started getting anxious about elementary schools of 11 or 1,200 students when we have an elementary school down here that's 1,000, and over time we've kind of been like, that's just maybe a little bit big for our communities. So in changing, Corey, where's Corey? Corey said one day, someone needs to check with Tremont. We've been told that we can't build there. We've looked at it. We can't build there. There's homes where we were supposed to bring the road in. Let's see what else Tremont can do. And so we met with them, and the planner over at Tremont said, yeah, 1/4 of a mile to 1/3 of a mile. We bring a road in. It's got bus access. It's really wide. This can be done. You've got the sewer there. We've got a proposed plan that we, in the past, had worked together with an architect on. We have everything set up, which, the community kept saying, you have everything set up. Why are you not building on this site that you promised us? And we were like, because we can't. And then we learned we can. Other roads are being built. They're coming in, and that property is now a viable access point that for years it kind of wasn't. And had we built on that site a few years ago, we would have replaced North Park. It would be out of service, and we'd still kind of be in a bad spot as far as growth. So this allows us to maybe take the Thatcher, Bothwell, Howell areas and some of that west side of Tremont and then bus them over there and realign some boundaries and take a big impact off of North Park and McKinley, eliminating those portables. We've kind of been in a situation for a few years now where we've been told Lakeview can't do more portables, they can't do more portables, and we're now getting to a point with North Park where it's we really shouldn't do more portables because we're going to start having more complications for that. So this is a really good way for us to address that and make the schools not be so big, 11 or 1,200 students, but still take some of that growth impact that's there now and we know is going to continue coming up on that Tremont area. It will minimize the overcrowding at Garland as well as eliminate those portables at North Park and McKinley. North Park and McKinley will then be able to have classrooms dedicated, what did you call it today, Karen? The prep spaces, out of classroom preps. That will allow them to have out of classroom preps because in those North Park, McKinley, and Lakeview, they don't have the benefit of out of classroom preps except for library and gym. Some of our other schools that are more appropriately sized do. So that would also allow us to improve our SPED programs in elementary schools. Right now we have kind of a situation where it's like we put them where we can move them. So you get 4 or 5 programs.
We can move them because we have room to move them.
Because there's room, yeah. So 4 or 5 programs at Garland, 3 at, these numbers are not completely accurate, but there is an imbalance. We don't just have a preschool, a functional skills, and a behavior or ED unit in every school. Instead, we've got a couple different things, like 2 preschools at McKinley, and North Park's had 4 special ed programs moved over the last 2 years, just trying to make additional space and put it where it's not. So that will be good. Another thing that we're talking about on this plan, and it's similar to what we had to do in the past with the bond, of saying $220 million will go as far as we can down this priority list. With this, truth in taxation, we will go as far as we can down the priority list, and we will include funds from capital reserve and selling property to be able to do that within the reasonable budget that we have. One of the things we're proposing, and you'll see it's down the list a little bit more, is the addition at Discovery, and that would be around 8 to 10 classrooms with hopefully a gym to support them. So that would take some overcrowding off of the south end with being able to redraw some boundaries, possibly use a demographer or an urban planner to help us create a good plan for where those boundaries should be so that it will sustain us into the future instead of be something that works for 4 or 5 years.
Now, as you look at all those phases, you're going to see a number that looks like it's around 90 million. And 90 million is because that's sort of the number of, you can't go more than that on a truth in taxation. So,
And it keeps the taxes.
and
at
it
an
keeps the
appropriate-
taxes at appropriate rates, so
$10 or less.
we're not having an increase that just really hurts our community. So,
What is that
yeah.
increase?
What's that?
What would that increase be in taxes?
Well, 40%,
Well, you need to raise $7 million per year to service that bond.
So on an average, $250 million,
What was our, what was the?
it was 1986. 1986.
So this would be
Times that by
essentially 40% of
40%.
that, we're thinking, it should be about $8. But, that's,
$7.94.
Yeah.
again, we can only estimate that so closely because you can't project for all of the increases in homes and.
So for I'm running numbers right now on live. I have a spreadsheet for this. For a business, it would be about $230 a month on a $450,000 valued commercial property. Most commercial properties are valued higher than that. Think about like your American First down here. Costs more than $450 to build. So that amount may go down. On a okay, hold that thought for 1 second here. I misspoke there. I had an extra zero.
That's what I thought, you said 230 a month.
I was gonna say,
I
for a
will-
business, I know they're more, they're valued at 100%.
20, you divide 100%, so $22 a month on commercial
Oh, that's way better.
and $11 a month on a average home.
How much?
11 on a home. So it's half the commercial rate.
Well, okay.
So, and that's absent any new growth. We don't get, so just a reminder, we don't get growth on existing property values. We don't get growth on new construction. So if you had a piece of land, a piece of farmland, you sold it and they built a car dealership on it, you get the growth in the car dealership. But if you have a business already exists or a home that already exists, the increase in market value does not result in an increase in taxes collected. Just remember that. So people say taxes go up, my value went up, you're charging more taxes. That only happens if you do truth in taxation and raise the tax rates, which we haven't done very well over the past decade. I have a slide I can show you guys later on if you would like to see what we've done.
Then we better be quick so
So
we
just to
can.
recap, $22 a month on a 450K business, $11 a month on a 450K home.
Correct. That's enough to support a $90 million truth in taxation, essentially a mortgage.
And one of the concerns that I have, just because that's the area I'm in, is Lakeview. And I know that addition of Discovery and reboundary will alleviate some of that pressure. Is there any chance at all of getting affordable on that property short term?
No, Corey.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is it is super difficult the way, because it's such a tight site. There are slopes that we'd have to level out. So possibly yes, it would not be cheap. It would cost more to put portables there than say at McKinley and North Park because they already have flat asphalt where we can put it. And North Park, Lakeview is such a tight site.
I know, and I'm very familiar with that site, and I just, that's my, from my people that I represent, at least in this area with Lakeview, that is a concern, is Lakeview is a concern.
Yep.
And I understand this plan, and I understand the reasoning behind it, but I think
But it's 2 years out.
it's 2 years, it's a little bit of ways for Lakeview, but if we have any kind of a, if we go with this, I think there's things that we can do, hopefully with the rebounding and some of these things that will alleviate some of that pressure and then moving forward, but I do, that is a concern.
And you,
Mrs. Taylor, so the door's not closed. I'm not
Yeah.
saying we can't do it.
No, sure.
I've reached out to our surrounding school districts to ask if they have any portables that are not using, and they're checking. So-
No, I know you, there's
So
been lots of work
we're
behind.
working on it.
Yeah, I know, I just wanted to make sure we address that.
Is it possible to add a portable at Discovery and ask for volunteers of just one grade that would be willing to drive to Discovery from Lakeview?
I would
Like to
anticipate,
save this year, because we could put another portable at Discovery this year, but I know that adds more pressure to Discovery, but I know that gets complicated because we would have to ask for only one grade.
Say fifth grade, put it out there, would you like to try the Discovery?
I would anticipate, considering how it's kind of gone with them living on the boundary of not being bused, that maybe we would need to provide a bus for those that opted in, which could be really complicated. Julie, you would know.
Yeah, and well, because Lakeview has no busing to it, and the other thing is a lot of times you've got multiple siblings in one building.
Yeah, DLI.
And so like, and the DLI's there, so
Yeah.
if we took any class out, then you've only got one non-DLI class at Lakeview, which I think is a real concern. That's one of the reasons we had, when we did Golden Spike, we're trying to make this bigger with that, because the Foothill of Chinese had that one, and we found that to be problematic. Bigger schools do better with DLI.
That's a
So I think.
creative way to look at
Trying
it.
to figure
Just
something
like
out, but.
volunteers or someone.
Any new
so
movie,
you have
would
to
you rather
drive
go here?
yourself, but you get to not be quite so crowded.
Well, and I would wonder too, if it was a 4th or 5th grade, they've already made friends and everything, and to move them where their friends were not, they
Yeah.
there may be some repercussions.
I think it'd be
there,
hard
I'm
just
not
to do
sure.
one grade, one classroom.
Yeah.
I would think, I know it's a Title I school, I don't know that a lot of parents are able to drive. Yeah, so.
That's why we might have to put it
Yeah.
on busing, yeah.
Catherine, you had maybe a special ed perspective?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because I don't have special classes in every building, that oftentimes when we need to move a student out of their homeschool boundaries to a different building, very often parents are asking if the siblings can follow. And it's getting harder and harder to accommodate that. And so I could potentially see that even if there were volunteers to go and do that, that they would say, I'll volunteer if everybody can go, and it
That
does.
25 kids might turn into 55 or 60.
And it is becoming, in some of those schools where we do have special classes, it is becoming burdensome on some of the general ed classes because of the siblings coming in. So some of those other grades would be closed because they're already at capacity.
slides on
So just
classes I
something
can
to
show.
take
I can
into
show the last two.
consideration.
We
That
could
just
maybe
show the rates.
reboundary now.
So 10, 15
Or-
minutes?
Yeah.
We'll try
The
to
new
20
growth
minutes.
down across the railroad tracks that's going in and bus them to Discovery.
I think that's
But
what
that
we need to
would
do at
kind of
demographer
probably
first. I
Yeah.
think we need to think long-term.
Be a
And-
lot of kindergarten.
Yeah, and that's why I think, I like this plan, like looking long-term, because it's gonna be, nobody's gonna get anything solved this fall. And even in the next 2 years, we still have issues, and we know that. But I think having a wider lens and seeing things like, hold on, we're doing everything we can, and certain things within like this time frame and this time frame, like I said, I think it's a good plan. It just doesn't address everything, which we knew it would.
Right.
I just have a question, and this has come up a number of times, these people I've talked to, with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we'll have 4 middle schools, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
But it's my understanding, now help me if I'm wrong, that 6th grade will be they won't just all be thrown together. 6th grade will still pretty much be on an elementary level, and 7th and 8th will be more together. Is that correct?
Well,
Right, or-
if we were, since these aren't new buildings
Uh-huh.
anymore, right?
Right.
But 6th grade currently at ACYI is in one part of the building,
That's-
and 7th grade is in the other part of the building. So when we do 6th, 7th, and 8th, there's going to be sort of a 6th grade area, a 7th grade area, and an 8th grade area.
Okay.
Yeah, for their core
I have a
classes.
daughter in 6th grade, and we work with friends, and they have a 7th grader, and we said, "Do you guys ever see each other?" Like, no, the 7th graders are all separate.
They have
No, the
different
6th graders
lunches.
all
Now, obviously, if you
Yeah.
have 2 grades and you have 2 lunches, you never see your 7th grader or 6th grader. If you have 6th, 7th, and 8th, unless you have 3 lunches, there might be some 6, 7 together, some 7 and 8 together. But the reality is the building will still be divided up, and there's not a 6th grade class that a 8th or 7th grade can take.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So just in and of itself, the curriculum says you're not really by the other kids. But everybody might have a PE class, so wherever the gym's located, someone will go to the gym, but 8th grade probably won't be there while 6th grade's there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just wonder, because some parents have been concerned.
I know that's a
everything's gonna be thrown
concern.
together.
It's interesting that 6 and 7 together, everybody seems to be okay with for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
But to add those horrible 8th graders, which I love, but somehow they have you know, it's a tough deal. I think they're great, but we'll certainly, by the nature of how it's built, we'll be kind of separated.
Okay.
Now, I know you can read, but I think one of the things that we learned from the bond, not just that it didn't pass, but this concept of 1,800 in a middle school. I've been the principal of Box Elder Middle School that had 1,100. There were so many kids. It's so big. Going to 1,800, I can't even imagine that. That would be bigger than Box Elder High School by 200. And Box Elder is our largest school. So what we've learned at this 6 through 8 4-school model actually brings it down into smaller than ACY. It's going to be more like a Bear River Middle School and a Harris Intermediate School with 6, 7, and 8. So the idea to know them, personal connections, because the buildings will actually have a little place to grow. Do you know what I mean? When you take 300 out of Box Elder Middle School, wow, that is big. And when you take another 300 out of Young, or you take 200 out of Harris and Bear River Middle, and Karina Fife could talk about that. That's a big impact on environment, safety, fill. So that's one thing we've learned is big schools might not be our best thing. And not that we didn't know it, it was a concern, but we didn't even think about this mindset of changing our plan from where we had it before. It would be really nice to say we're going to spend $50 million on Box Elder Middle School and Bear River Middle at the same time, but that's going to be over $90 million. So we're not going to be able to do that. So this idea of this phased approach, Bear River Middle School gets replaced in a new property, elementary, Lakeview gets replaced. Obviously, depending on the finances where we are, that's when the bond is done being paid for. So we kind of recoup maybe a little tax relief, but maybe we could bring it back.
So the bond's $3.3 million per year. And our RDA, or our tax increment financing deals we have out there, that same year, about $3 million will fall off of that too. So we're looking at a $6 million swing in 29.
Will that fall off in June or December?
That's, so our fiscal years are actually a year behind. So that falls off in the June of 26. So it's June of 29. So starting July of 29 was actually fiscal 30 is when we start to receive the additional revenue.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a point on on the size of those middle schools. And I've said this before in public meeting, but it was 20 years ago. I was at Box Elder, I was at North Summit, and North Summit built a new middle school. And prior to that, they had a big long rectangle building with 2 halls. And then the kids would go this way or that way to class, gym in the middle. And when we moved into the new middle school, the principal had kept really good statistics, and they found a 32% drop in discipline issues in the hallways. The next point is, as many of you know, we decided to go double runs with our buses, stagger our start times. We hoped it would be the case, but we have found it to be true that the number of discipline issues on buses has drastically reduced, simply because there's fewer kids on the buses. Before they were jam-packed. When they're jam-packed, kids have a tendency to jab and poke. And just the fact that these middle schools will be much smaller, there's just less people in those hallways to do that. So I think that will be definitely a side effect that is one of those positive things that, we won't know until we know. And we do keep really good statistics on that right now, so we'll be able to compare the two if in fact this comes to fruition.
Yes, sorry I was late if you've already covered this. How does this plan fit into the survey results?
Lots of different ways. All of the survey results were considered in putting this plan together. So before, the tax increase was too much, with about 60% of our voters saying it was too much, either because the $220 million sticker was too much, or the overall economic situation was too much to handle at one time. So yeah, this is from those bond survey results, as well as some of the information that we're using throughout the rest of it, as far as like the reconfiguration of the grade bands You know, there's been some questions about that and why is that a need? And everybody, if people were against it, why are we moving forward? When our bond survey results came out, it showed that 28% of voters who participated in that survey said it was a reason to reject the bond, but an additional 10% or 38% of people said that was a reason to support the bond. So really we had more people willing to support that than against it, especially if we consider that the neutral portion of that, we found that there were a lot of people that as they understand how that impacts academics, opportunities in the high school to take advanced courses, concurrent enrollment, get your associates, take pathways, are improved by moving the 9th grade over. Oftentimes the neutral people can be supportive when they understand.
And then the results in the upper right-hand corner, this was the like when Y2 Analytics sent out, you know, their representation. 81% said they supported that concept of a 6 or 8. So before we went to bond, they supported it. After we said why, we still had more support for the 6-8 model. And I know there are people that don't want 6,
Yeah.
but in order to go 6 backwards, you have to add on to every elementary school because we're overcrowded.
4 brand new ones, 5 brand new ones?
Yeah, I mean that I understand that'd be nice to go backwards, but to put a 6th grade with a kindergartner seems a lot further away than a 6th grade to an 8th grader in terms of maturity, etc. So we would have to add on to every school to bring a 6th grade, or we create another level. And we've gone on through all these before, but I want to add a couple.
I've been an elementary teacher over the last 20 years, an administrator, and our 6th graders today are not the same as they were 20 years ago. Developmentally, they are different. Socially, they are different. And, you know, I know we have a group of 6th graders that we are innocent and they are sweet and they are not as grown up as some of the 6th graders that we see. But I have to consider the kindergarten students that are 5 years old being in buildings with 12-year-olds who are not anywhere near those 5-year-olds, particularly considering some of the things that kids are exposed to now.
And I realize we can't make everybody happy, but I think based on the survey results and information that we've got from the public, we've got the argument that, because people have talked to me and said, well, your survey says nobody wants 9th grade in high school. Well, that's not true.
That's not true.
And so I just want to make sure we have that covered. The other thing that I hear a lot about is moving the 9th grade to the high school that we need to address is it's going to overcrowd the high school. There's just not enough space. And have we talked about that much?
Talking about classroom space or just space?
Just overall for everything, yeah. The high schools are already at capacity now. You throw another grade in there, it's going to make
I know
the band room, the choir, everything's overcrowded, the lunchroom, everything.
Yeah. All of that is going to, I mean, obviously today on the agenda, you know, if a decision is to approve architects and CMGC's contractors for the you know, but we've listened for a couple of days about possible ideas and plans. Obviously nothing's set in stone, just kind of like, here's some initial thoughts. Obviously it's going to take stakeholders and a variety of people to get a feel. But I was amazed how creative to use the spaces we have on both ends. I was like, I never thought about that, never thought about that, never thought about that. So I do believe the professionals that do buildings every day for their life, unlike me, I was quite amazed at the ideas of how we use space, just in ways I'd never even thought about. So I think that would be addressed. And you know, I know this dates me, but I taught at Box Elder High when it was grades 9 through 12. So I know that seems odd, but back in 93, 94, there were 4 grades at both high schools. And so on the same campus. And I know that, you know, we had just under 2,000 kids, and I'm just saying it worked. Now guess what you didn't get? You didn't get one lunch. You ended up with 2 lunches, and I know that's going to blow our high school kids' mind. What? I want to go on this side for the A lunch instead of this on the B lunch. But there are ways, and there is creative ways within a budget and the constraints that we had put on to address that issue.
So I've just been studying a lot about these things. So I guess this 15-year plan with your phase 1, I just feel like through this results, the bond results, that there are 3 main, that whereas the 2/3 majority voted that this is what they really want. It was the safety in the middle and the elementary schools. The elementary schools are too crowded, and air conditioning. So I guess I'm curious why that wouldn't be the phase 1 priorities. I know you're talking long-term, like I get that, but you're saying also that these can be completed within 2 years, 2 to 3 years?
By
So
20
if we shift that down to the phase 2, those are quick fixes, and then we are addressing the needs that the community sees.
We
So
don't have
to
the money to do the middle.
To speak to that, the 2 middle schools would be 50 million and 55 million. So right now, you'd be at 115 million just to do the 2 middle schools. And again, those would be middle schools of 1,800, and we don't want to go that direction. But, well, actually, it would have been, let me correct myself, I apologize, 144 million to build the middle schools for 6th through 8th grade currently, with just keeping the intermediate schools. The smaller middle schools would then be 50 million and 55 million. At that point, we couldn't do that plan because we couldn't split between the 2 middle schools because we don't have the 9th grade moved off of the buildings. Does that make sense? So we'd have to build the bigger middle schools.
Yes.
It would have to be
But
the
I guess
144 million
what
price
I
tag.
see though is that the elementary schools are so overcrowded that if we don't address that now, I mean, we're just gonna get more portables every year. Like, our these families that are coming in, they're small families, they're young families, and the elementary schools are the ones that are gonna get hit. I mean, we know what our numbers are for teenagers, that we have this, I mean, even our numbers have, I mean, on the north end it's a little different, but there's still, the numbers have gone down. So as they're shifting through these 6th, 7th, middle, high school, those numbers aren't growing, so we're not overcrowd. We are over, you know what I mean. We're not overly crowding them, where we are in the elementaries. So I feel like our elementaries should be almost the top priority, and then the middle schools, however that works out. But before you correct me on all that I just said, with the truth in taxation, when it's going through and we're saying we're getting this amount of money, is that in a 1-year thing, or does that because the truth in taxation stays there and it just accumulates
So
year by
it
year?
accumulates, so when we raise taxes, say we raise it by $7 million, we collect an additional $7 million every year. It's like getting a raise at your job.
Yes, but the way I understand it is you have that, let's say it's the 7 million. But the next year, if you have more people, then everybody's taxes are going down because there's more people to share in paying toward that 7 million, correct?
Let's pause that thought and let's finish this. I have some slides that will demonstrate this, so talk to this.
Don't be sorry.
I'm not
We
sure.
agree with you, Stephanie, that the elementary needs to be addressed.
Okay.
We agree. That's why it's in phase 1. You have to put, huh?
Part of it.
Well, we,
Well, what's the suggestion of part of it? Is that build another elementary up here?
Well, I guess in 20 years, you're looking at replacing North Park, adding on Fielding, and replacing Willard. When I feel like these elementary schools, that is where we're waiting 20 years to replace schools, or even addition to schools that they're growing.
But we're
So-
adding potentially North End, brand new elementary in West Tremont, and we're adding the Discovery, so that will address some of the overcrowding in those schools like Lakeview down here and North Park and McKinley up there. It's in the first couple years of the plan to
That's in
address.
phase 1.
And phase 1.
Yeah, so you'll take 200 students from the south end to move to Discovery, 150 to 200. And by building an elementary school on the north end, you can take 750 students out of the schools on the north end from Century to Fielding.
I
And-
guess, I'm sorry.
and still use North Park until we get down the road. I mean, it is true, it has unreinforced masonry, and so does
Like
Lakeview.
the high
And
school
so do the
and
middle
Century.
schools. But by taking out kids, we've addressed overcrowdedness at all of the middle schools. We've addressed overcrowdedness up north by building a brand-new school that can hold 750. So that alleviates a little bit of Garland, that alleviates North Park, that alleviates McKinley, and we still keep those schools. And then we will replace them in time as soon as we can. Unfortunately, unless you go to bond again and say, hey, we want the whole package, we are going to have to phase it. And I'm not saying we don't want to do that. I'm just saying if we don't go to bond, we have to phase it.
So, and let's say we jumped to a portion of phase 2 and phase 3, okay? If we rebuilt Bear River Middle School, no, let's just say we rebuilt North Park on the north end, and we rebuilt Box Elder Middle School on the south end. That's not going to help the population growth of the elementary schools because it's going to be the same size as North Park currently is. As well as we'd have to build the middle school to sustain more students since we're not moving the 9th grade up. Those 2 buildings would cost us $85 million without being able to address other problems on both ends.
So this isn't set in stone. I look at it that if things go well, phase 2, a part of phase 2 could be moved up, or
Then-
phase 3 could be moved up, and it could shift and change depending on if a different need comes up.
And the 9th grade is a means to an end. Moving the 9th grade, again, we have core classrooms there and CTE that needs to be addressed too. It's not like the high school has no needs. The high school does have needs. That would be addressed by moving the 9th grade there in conjunction with it. It also alleviates the pressure of the middle schools having to be rebuilt to suit 1,500 to 1,800 students, which is what gave us the $144 million price tag. So it allows us to split those middle schools and make them smaller as soon as the 9th grade is put into position. It allows us to make those middle schools smaller, and the day-to-day, yes, the unreinforced masonry is still there. The only way to address the 95% of unreinforced masonry was a $220 million bond. We can't do it all at once. So when we look at, are we more likely to get an earthquake, or are we more likely to have bullying and kids in fight and kids being knocked down in the hallways and them elbowing each other and harassment and all of those things happening? That happens every day, several times a day in these overcrowded, unsafe spaces. And so
I might just add one last thing, and we have 34 portables. Actually,
36.
we have 36 because we added 2 more since the beginning of the year. So we have 36 portables. Phase 1 will take away 12 secondary school portables. 12 are going to be gone by adding 9th grade to the high school.
17.
And then 17 elementaries are going to be gone by adding the new school out on the Tremont property. So now you've taken 29. And if we add on to Discovery, then all of a sudden we've taken pressure off of Lakeview. Just in the first year and a half, that's a pretty significant addressing lots of issues, both north and south, both K through 12.
So phase 1 would eliminate all portables?
At the secondary level, gone.
Secondary.
Secondary,
you would
Where
probably
else would-
still have Century's portables.
Century.
More than likely, it would get rid of Lakeview's, Discovery's, and North Park and McKinley
So
because
Century
of,
would be the only elementary left with a portable, and we wouldn't have any.
based on current numbers.
yeah, based on current numbers.
Getting
95% of portables are.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the portables could also, at the elementaries, could also be accomplished by what Stephanie was saying, focusing on the elementary schools at first, with the lower, maybe not going for the whole 90 million, just focusing on the elementaries for the first part, and then when the current bond and the RDA drops off in 2029, maybe looking at that to go out and do the secondary type things, because the survey results did say that people were, and what I'm hearing is people are more concerned about the elementary, and I feel like that that might help create more trust within the district, which was the number one thing that the Y2K analytics said, is we need to work on trust. So although we have all these needs, maybe if we take just a small bite, rather than taking it up $11 a household per month, we look at taking it up 3 or 4, which is addressing the
And then we have to go to phase 4, and we're at 2080. Because
But it's,
2060 was
you know,
these 3 phases.
We may be able to, at that point, if we build trust, we may be able to go out to the bond, which allows us to do it in a faster time frame.
What are you hearing that are the higher priority at the elementary over middle school?
Since we started talking bond, that's the only thing I've heard is elementary. That's where people see the need, and that's kind of where they are willing to put their money. Not 220 million worth, but a smaller amount. So if we could do a smaller amount and address.
Because to me, the overcrowding at middle school is a higher priority. To me, the elementary schools, I don't know.
We're making do,
administration-
doing without, getting by, yeah.
To me, the middle school
I agree.
is the
That's
worst.
It's unsafe.
Is the very worst situation, and I agree we want to address the elementary, but I'm having a hard time seeing that that's a higher priority.
And
The overcrowding, because we have to put more portables at the elementary, is a higher priority than the safety issues that we're having at the middle school.
But with the elementaries, you've got 2 full grades outside in portables where there's no restrooms. They have to get key carded into the school to go to the bathroom. And it's not, I don't think it's conducive to an elementary school.
But that'll be solved with this plan.
Yeah, I'm just saying, what I'm saying is that I see
So
elementary
priority.
school is a huge priority.
I
feel
agree.
like they're
I
balanced
agree.
It's
priorities. I feel like they're balanced priorities, but if we only do elementary, we only do, it would be we're replacing North Park or we're replacing Lakeview. It gives us no option to plan for growth. And then when we get to 2029, we're gonna need another new elementary possibly on both ends.
I would
And
say,
then that just would kick middle schools down the road.
I agree
further.
with you, Danielle. If all we did was replace North Park and Lakeview, we're actually not addressing the overcrowding issues in the elementary. If we neglected the middle schools and the high schools right now, and I want to clarify that I'm speaking from the elementary perspective here. If we neglected the high schools and the middle schools right now and said, let's not worry about that and let's only do what we need to do for the elementary schools, let's build this new West Tremont school and let's add on to Discovery and let's just cut it off there. I don't think that is fair. Yes, our elementary schools are getting by, but our middle schools are not safe in the fact of the day-to-day interactions of overcrowding. People, recall those pictures of them being herded through the hallways like cattle. Like, I remember in junior high, I was a little squirrely thing. My glasses getting knocked off and getting trampled in the hallway. Like, these are things that our kids are experiencing in the middle school every single day. And so from an elementary standpoint, yes, I want to advocate for those elementary teachers. I want them to have out-of-classroom prep. But that doesn't make the students as unsafe as the interactions they're having day to day in the middle school hallways. And that has to be taken into consideration. And if we can address as many levels as possible with phase 1, I think we owe it to those kids who are bullied, the people that are constantly posting on Facebook classifieds about how hard it is to be in those intermediate and middle schools. And that's my elementary perspective about balancing the needs of the district.
I would just like to say the beauty of a board is that we all have different neighbors with kids in different schools. Our children are in different grades and schools. We interact with different, so the interactions that Karen or your experience right now is maybe different than the experience that Brian and I are having because of where our children are in the school system. So the beauty of a board and different perspectives is that we get to see the issues at each grade level. And we hear about the issues at each grade level. And we really have to work hard not to keep that as our only vision, but to look outward to all of the experiences. I think that this plan, our leadership team has worked really hard to look and try to affect at every grade level the best that we can immediately. Not 20 years down the road or 10 years down the road, but now. That's my feelings. I've heard both, and I understand both. Our portables are, none of us want our kids out in portables. We don't want the overcrowding that we're seeing at North Park and McKinley and Lakeview. We want kids to be able to be in a classroom, a nice, safe classroom. I think this plan, it's tough at first, it's larger at first, it's a bigger ask at first, but to impact all of our schools positively, I think we have to do the tough ask now. That's my opinion.
Can I just ask James' opinion, Principal Kent, on ninth grade at the high school? Can we get your opinion on ninth grade at the high school?
Oh, well, I think leaving them where they're at and bringing them, there's pros and cons to both. There's always going to be that social, mental, like moving ninth grade in with the 10th, 11th, and with seniors. But the academic stuff, there's a lot more we can do. So right now, we are not, like we're kind of, they can't accelerate and go into some of those other classes with how we have it set up right now. But I think there's a lot of parents that do feel comfortable with the ninth grade, not with the 12th grade. So we swap that, and then there's things we'll have to do as a staff at the high school to help make sure that the ninth graders feel welcome and not just isolated, but also that we have them where they need to be and they're safe too. But I feel like that's pretty easy to do. I mean, those grades were together in elementary school. They play sports together. So they do mix together as it is. There's a lot of things we can do with the classes. We get middle school kids wanting to come over all the time to take math and accelerate in some of those other classes. The state is pushing for 9th and 10th graders to be able to take more concurrent and AP, and that's just really hard to get them prepared and on the path that they should be on when they're at the 9th grade. So it will be easier credit-wise to have them all there together and be able to help them that way.
I'm sorry. I don't know who you are.
I'm a principal at Fox River High School.
Thank you.
So what about what Keith has addressed, or I'm hearing from teachers at the high school that are concerned about overcrowding, of not necessarily, maybe we can figure out the classrooms, but the other areas, the lunch eating areas, the band room, all of those other things. Are you confident that we can address those concerns from our faculty at the high schools?
Yeah, I mean, we have more teachers, we have more classroom space, we can do 2 lunches, there's different things we can do to eliminate how many are out in the hallway at certain times. I mean, it's not going to be as easy in 6, 7, 8 school to keep them separated because they're going to, I mean, part of why we're bringing them there is to give them more opportunity for some of those classes, but just eliminating who can be where at what time will help a lot and bringing in more admin. I know some of our teachers are worried about more behaviors, and so those are things that we would definitely have to address to make sure we have a handle on.
If I could, Mrs. Fife, as most of you know, we just left Bear River Middle School as the principal, and the advantage they have is proximity to the high school. Do you know in a day, if I'm not mistaken, there was teachers who just walk over and actually teach at the high school and the other way around, plus kids are doing this too.
Yeah, but that's also a problem, because that's where we got a lot of the slopping. They're going over to the high school and then they don't return. And we have a drill or a lockdown, and we have kids that are coming back from the high school that are then locked out of the school. So that's like also a concern, a safety concern. If it had been not a drill and a real situation, we would have kids that are going back and forth, and that's a concern. So, I mean, I think this is a fantastic idea, but that's just my opinion. From serving at the middle school too, not just from the high school advantage of that, but also from the middle school and what they need, and the overcrowding in the halls, and dividing it into 2 so that you don't have that. I think the middle schools always get a lot of flack on they're being bullied and stuff like that, and there is bullying, but it's a hard age. Kids are transitioning. They don't know if they're the high school teenagers or if they're the young kids. They're kind of trying to find themselves at that age, which is why I always love middle school. But I also think that creates a lot of emotion and stuff, and then you have them crowded in those halls trying to deal with all of that, where if you could separate it out a little bit so that they have room and they have place.
Keith, before you talk about this slide, if I could just mention one thing, kind of to talk about what Tiffany said, is there was a board president that I had once in Carbon School District, and he said, I like the way he put it, he said, it's the board's need to look at everything from a 20,000-foot view. They've got to be up there looking at everything at the same time, because everybody on the ground is looking only at the 100-foot view or the 200-foot view, but the school where their kids are at the same time and the principals where they're at that same time. So the board has to look down and be able to see the whole thing and help it all mesh together. And I need to say this before I say the next thing. I love Box Elder School District. I've been here 8 years now. And I'm so grateful to be here in this northern Utah and working for this school district. But I also need to say this. We have a history of kicking the can down the road and doing it nickel and dime at a time and band-aiding. And we really have got to get caught up because our kids are not just competing for national jobs. Our kids are competing for international jobs. And just 20 miles, 25 miles down the road, there are things like Innovation High School at Ogden School District. There are, in Davis, they have incredible things that are going on, and our kids are getting left behind. And we need to really step up and help our kids be as successful as possible. This right now is as close as we can get to give them that advantage. Take those AP, take those concurrent enrollment, to get into the higher levels of math sooner than they are because we're split up. And I think this really helps us get to what we're really after, is to help our kids learn at high levels, but ultimately to leave Box Elder High School from the 12th grade and be prepared to go out and be successful. And I just really hope that we take that 20,000-foot view as we look at this whole situation.
I might just add, you can see that if the economy says that a 6 or 7 increase in price, what's going to be the bigger prices? By getting the 9th grade over now, that's our biggest amount, but by getting it now where the price is, anyway, it starts to accomplish the plan a lot quicker. Then we build a little smaller middle schools, which is going to be a savings, even though we have to push that down the road. And elementary costs, obviously, are less than the high school. But when you look at K-12, the whole gamut, this is, I guess, our suggestion as a phased in. It does answer, a lot of people are like, well, where are you going to put the middle school? Well, now we know we're going to put it right in the north part because it's not an 1,800 student population school, it's 1,000. So we know where we can keep the gym. Why? Because it's the best gym in the district. It's the newest gym in the district. We don't have to sell it. What about the auditorium? We have an auditorium. Yes, it's unreinforced masonry. Yes, it was part of the original. But guess what? We still could use it for those, handful of days that we use it every week or, every month. So
Possible to maybe pay $1 million or a couple million to do reinforced masonry for the auditorium if it's separated from the rest of
down the road when, whatever the money situation is, whatever the projected growth is. So
what long-term solution is, it doesn't really say here, it says use intermediate schools as middle schools, is to have 2 middle school, the long-term plan is to have 2 middle schools
on each end.
On each end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, keep it that way.
Yeah, keep it that way.
So you could have kind of a 3 Mile Creek Lakeview to feed Young. You could have kind of North Discovery Golden Spike to feed Box Elder Middle. So you kind of have these elementary schools, they're separate, then they come together in a 6, 7, 8, and then they all kind of come together in a 9 through 12. There's some positive not being with your same classmates for 6 years. Sometimes you've kind of worn out your welcome at times. So this kind of keeps them apart a little bit. We start building towards, I don't know, it really resonates to me, having been a principal at Box Elder Middle School with 1,100 and seeing how crowded the hallways. I invite each of you to go walk the halls at class break time at both Box Elder Middle School and Bear River Middle and just get a little flavor of what our 7th, 8th, 8th and 9th graders go through. So it really is, I understand, $90 million, that's a big bite. But when you can't get 220 and you have these needs, you can keep going and it'll turn into a 20-year plan because it's just going to keep going. So it is kind of really a tough decision that the board has to make. I admire you, but that's the deal.
The 90 million increases every 2 to 7 years, right? So we're ratcheting it up as hard and as high as we can every 2 years.
Well, not every 2 years, but
Well, phase 2 is to 27 to 29, or so 4 years. And
The
then
previous one would have followed.
so.
And then that's why you wait till the bond falls off in 29.
So when you get to
Still-
But it's still
In
an
29,
increase.
it would almost stay neutral, because this gets us like 90 million is
Yes.
7 million a year, and you said 6 million falls off in 2029?
So we have 3 million from the bond that falls off in 29 and 3 million from tax increment finance that falls off in 29. So it's a $6 million swing. That's almost the same as taking out a second $80 million bond. So we could keep rates level and again, room to take out an additional $80 million leased revenue bond to finance phase 2. So really, we wouldn't have to revisit taxation on any different scale until 2035.
So I guess that's where can we revisit my point?
Yeah, you care if I take over?
Yeah, go ahead. That's why I disconnected.
While he's bringing that up, several months ago, we met, well, it wasn't that long ago, when the Facilities Advisory Committee met. The plan that was discussed and brought up at that meeting was strictly just secondary. And I just want to say how much I appreciate this team, this leadership team, the superintendent, Neil, you two, for taking a step back and relooking at things and getting every aspect of education, K through 12, involved in this phase 1. I'm really grateful for that. It took a lot of work and thinking outside the box and crunching numbers. So thanks.
So I'm
One
not connecting to
addition
Vivi here.
that may be a phase 4 or would affect phase 3 is
what
if
do you-
the Chamber's projections on
Want me to
Minnesota
switch it
County
over?
are true. They're projecting that we go up to nearly 80,000
Is there a
citizens
separate
by
for this building?
2033.
What's that?
Is there a
So
separate way out now for this building?
that is,
Shouldn't be, it should be the
if you
same
keep
Wi-Fi,
20% as being students in school, that's 3,500 new
It's
students
Microsoft.
by 2033. So we may be adding a third high school in phase 3 instead of something else.
Which goes to the point that you made that this isn't written
That
in
probably won't
stone.
work
Things
because I don't
can
have a
change in
display
10,
adapter.
15 years.
I mean, yeah, we're making projections of stuff that, best case scenario.
If nothing changed, we would go with
Well,
this.
here's one of the things that I've been thinking, and Tiffany asked us to write down our greatest needs, and how does this address that? And I tend to agree with this addresses the most students impacted the best possible way. One concern that I've heard is like, well, why do the 9th graders need to take accelerated classes? Why do we need to do that? And the fact of the matter is they don't, but what Superintendent Carlson said, that's the direction people are going. And I have a son that is, what they did for my son, he was in math specifically, they did an accelerated path when he was a sophomore. He took secondary math 2 honors and secondary math 3 honors in 1 year. And I'm a math teacher by profession, and when he told me he was doing that, I thought, there is a lot of holes he's not getting. And so to spread it out so they can take those accelerated classes earlier and not have to cram it all in, and that's just one specific example. There's other people that say when we're in high school, we do high school. And when we go to college, we'll do college. And that's great. And there still will be all of those opportunities, all those electives that we have fought so hard to keep. But we also have to consider those kids that just want to get in, get out, get done, and have those opportunities. And if we're not providing those opportunities, they're looking for them elsewhere, and they're not maybe causing other issues that we can help with in that sense. So that's why I've heard that response. We don't need to excel. There's no need to do that. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. But we've fought hard as a district to keep electives. Since I've been on the board, we have fought hard to keep those choices available. And so if we're going to still make all those choices available and not go these other choices, I think that's kind of saying we're not really saying that we care about those things. I don't think that's our message that we've been saying for years.
Neil, will you be sure to email us these slides?
Yes, I have.
And will you be sure to email us that last one especially? I think we have the others on paper, but that
So
was it.
this demonstrates our final calculated tax rate. So we have proposed rates that are based upon initial property tax values. Then there's an appeal process. A homeowner or business can decide to appeal the valuation. There's also abatements for senior citizens and for veterans. And there's also property tax relief that delays the collection.
So those all affect what these rates are. These are the final calculated rates after we apply all those reductions and exemptions to our property tax collections. And we collect about 95% of all property tax assessed. So there is delinquencies here that takes into account to come to this final rate. So what we see here is in our combined rate in 2018, 0.00775. Look at our final rate in 2024, 0.0586, our last column. No one can see my cursor here, I can. We have experienced a 25% reduction in our tax rate relative to property tax values. That means rate values went up and we held the same. So if we would have kept the rate the same, we would have collected 25% more over this same time period. But because we neglected to do taxation or other measures to keep it level, we actually lost purchasing power as a district since 2018.
So we haven't done truth in taxation since 2018?
We did it in 2023, and that's why you see the decrease from 22 to 23 is only 6% instead of 10 or 12.
So we just skipped 1 year since 2023.
Yes.
We did it last year, and we're trying to go for the
No, we
bond.
did, he's saying we only did it in 2023.
We've done it one time.
But
Or there were small increases here.
I was gonna say, I think we've done it small along the way.
But
We've only
2018
done
and
it well,
2019
because
lost.
every rate it drops every year until 2023.
Yeah, these are cumulative.
They're
So-
cumulative.
Has it dropped because people move into the area? Is that?
It drops because rates, so values go up, rates go down compared to the values. There's an inverse relationship. Our property tax law is based on revenue, and it's not based upon your value. So revenue is what we start with. So last year we collected $7.5 million in taxes, just as an example. And this year we'll collect the same amount unless we either have changes in properties, like farmland to commercial or farmland to residential, or we raise the rates. We generally experience around 2.5% growth, meaning new taxable properties that can increase property taxes, 2.5% per year. Everything else can stay level, unless you mess with these rates, which we haven't been, and that's why we're receiving some growth, but not the same growth we would have received if we incrementally increase these rates over time.
So I guess my question would be with that is, let's say, I really do think having secondary, I think it's really a great thing, and I want to do that. But if we focused on just doing the smaller increment this time, but then next year, how did you let? I know that our area is supposed to get so much bigger. So if we do this and keep our tax rates level every year or whatever that, be more conscious of that, we will be getting more money every year.
It's not fast enough.
I was going to say that 2.5% growth that you said that we get about every year.
Yeah.
What is the dollar figure on 2.5%?
I'm not prepared for that figure
I
right
mean,
now.
I know, like, do you have an estimate?
So,
I won't hold you to
so
it.
2.5, we actually get, so if it's residential, we actually only get 1.5% of that, because we get, or 1.125, because we get 50, we get a 45% break on a residential value. So if it goes up by $100,000, we tax $50,000. We're not experiencing very much growth there.
So a new build, a $500,000 home, we tax on $250,000.
Yes, that's correct.
So their taxes, say if it was $1,500 on a $450,000 home, we only collect $750.
That's right. Well, no, so.
Or is
let's-
that
I'll-
right?
I'll use my former residence, valued in Weaver County, $500,000 market value, taxing at $250,000. With all the taxes in Weaver County, I was paying right around $3,000 a year in taxes. They have a little higher rates than we do. So that same home, say you build a $500,000 home, a new build, you're gonna get $3,000 in revenue. You'd have to build $100,000 homes to get $3 million in revenue. We don't get, it takes so long to catch up to those numbers if you're relying on growth alone.
Yeah, thank you. That's over my head. I'd have to hear that 7 more times.
So we would have got
but
$3,000 for a home.
I,
And then so he's saying in order to get the $3 million of revenue that we could otherwise potentially get, we have to build 100,000 homes. we're not gonna increase our, that's why I say it's not gonna catch up fast.
The majority of your growth in tax revenue comes from commercial.
We're not seeing that growth.
We
But we
are,
will though, don't you think?
so we are seeing some of the growth, but the growth is incentivized.
It's
Yeah.
inland port and it's a write-off for them, we don't collect.
For businesses, homes, we do, but it's so.
Yeah, but when they incentivize large areas from the state through property tax internet financing, which we've done in the past as well, we lose a lot of that value collection for a long period of time, essentially a generation, 25 years. Lakeshore Learning, Youth Courts will expand to a $200 million project. Across the highway, we have Reeder Ranch. It's not, they haven't got any development going on there, but those are areas that are going to grow, but we will see very little revenue from those areas for 25 years because of the mechanism they're using to incentivize growth.
Thank you. We are out of time, and I know that there are unresolved issues. I don't know if some of you, if you feel like we need to meet again in between, maybe shoot Superintendent or I an email and we'll see if there's
You're talking in between now and next month.
Right, if there's a majority of want to do that, we'll try and make it work.
What I also offer
Just send us an email and we'll.
to the
we'll be
board,
sure.
if you have questions of me, make an appointment with me, and I will spend time to talk about those things.
Thanks, Neil. Yes, thank you. I worked so hard, I'm so sorry about everything. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't think
I know you did, you did a good job.
Thank you.
That was a good question. Those are things that-
Thanks for the cookie. Tonight, I guess that's our call to order, and then I have been asked to give our reverence.